Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Burn Bootcamp podcast. Every Thursday, we launch Ask Devin Anything. That's where you're at right now. You're here with me, and I had a question that came from y'all that I thought would be fantastic to explore this, to give you some tools, and hopefully share with you on exactly how I handle some of these things. So the question was, how do I take things less personally? That's a great question. And I think the answer lies within the question, how do I stop attacking other people, or how do I stop feeling attacked by other people? It's very easy, right, to judge other people, right? And so I think that's the root cause of feeling attacked or attacking others, is making judgments or saying what you think about this person subjectively, because everybody has their own perspective. And my perspective of the word lazy might not be your perspective of the word lazy. So if I use the word, I say, hey, you're lazy. Well, maybe my idea of lazy is 30 hours at work a week. Maybe somebody else's is only 60, right? So you could have two completely different people have the same word, and that word means something different to them. Judgment tries to take a word and tries to give a blanket definition of that word to everyone evenly, and that never ever works out, because why? We're not the same. You and I, we're not the same. We are uniquely talented. We're individualistic. We have our weird idiosyncrasies that make us who we are, that make us unique. You're 1 in 400 trillion statistically, okay? And so what I wanted to do on the podcast today was answer this question and give you my perspective on how I go about this in my own life. And there's really two main tools. The first one is called NVC, Nonviolent Communication. Now, this is a book by a guy, a professor of psychology. Maybe he was a professor. No, he wasn't a professor. He was a psychologist, a clinical psychologist by the name of Marshall Rosenberg. And Marshall Rosenberg wrote a book called Nonviolent Communication. Although I really don't like the title of it, I understand why this title is what it is, because Marshall was essentially contracted to go mediate between two countries that were on the brink of going to war. So the highest order of conflict that you could have, Marshall Rosenberg was sent in to mitigate that and to make sure that both sides didn't go to war. Okay, so now in our lives, the stakes aren't that high. All right, in our lives, it's just the miscommunication we had with somebody else, the judgment, the perceptions that we don't quite understand that other people have of us and that we have of other people. And when I read Nonviolent Communication, or we just call it NVC, I was like, yup, this is it. This will be the foundation of my communication, because I believe you to be a leader. And if you're not, then you're definitely not leading your own life, okay? Because you are leading your own life. So you're a leader. You're leading your own life, okay? You're leading your family, your inner circle, maybe, potentially, and then potentially a business or potentially a community, but definitely you're leading yourself. You might not be doing a very good job at leading yourself. I think that's okay. There's a gap from where you're at today to where you want to go, and we can help close that gap. There's no shame in uncovering what your gaps are as a human being. In fact, it's the most important information that you can have. Quick tangent. In my business, I have something called the issues list. The issues list is more important than the vision of the company, because without being able to identify the issues that are getting in the way of the vision is just some esoteric philosophical thing that never actually gets traction or never actually lands, okay? And so it's so important to be able to have the self-awareness to identify the gaps in your life. At least for me it is, right? That brings me great power. It brings me great satisfaction when I can self-analyze something, or somebody else can practice this NVC stuff that I'm about to share with you, and they can help me find a gap where I find one myself. Man, there's no more successful feeling than being able to close that gap, knowing that you applied self-awareness, you found something and closed it to make yourself a better person. So keep the issues in your life, keep your own personal issues list at the forefront all right? And all of your communication starts with you. Okay, I said you're a leader, you're at least the leader of your own life. Okay, the first chapter of the leadership book in my world is communication, all right? This book is called Nonviolent Communication. So communication is a huge discipline and a practice just in itself and can be applied across many different platforms and channels. But this one is this tool is universally applicable to whatever conflict-oriented situation that you are in. What happens most often, and you know this, is we're scared of that conflict. We're frightened. We might feel that we're going to hurt somebody else's feelings if we tell them something. Or we might feel like that person might not like us, right? We might lose love. And that's what we do everything based on, is love. We might lose love if I tell somebody something that I perceived that they could have done better or different. So NVC, Nonviolent Communication, all right, has 4 letters, OFNR. Observation, feelings, needs, and requests. Okay? When I was reading the Marshall Rosenberg NVC book, the whole process as you're somebody like mediating a conflict is to ask the other person this first question: what needs do you have that are not being met? And what they usually do is tell you all their feelings, right? No. I didn't say feelings. They might say, I'm feeling frustrated. I think this, or I think that, or I'm sad, or I'm angry, or I'm happy, or I'm depressed, or I'm anxious, or whatever feeling that it is. I don't know. I said, what needs do you have? What needs do you have? Okay? I have a need to feel that I am progressing in my career. I have a need to put family first. I have a need to put a roof over my head at a certain square footage. I have a need to raise my children the way that I think raising my children should be done. I have all these needs. You can think about them as like non-negotiables. Okay, everybody has their own non-negotiables. And what happens, instead of observing, we judge, okay? And when we judge, we basically trample over those needs, okay? We're not listening to somebody if we're not understanding what their needs are. So that's a fantastic question. Listen, if you're in a high conflict situation, maybe you're getting an argument with your spouse at your house, or it's a vendor on the phone in your business, or it's a coworker, it's somebody in the school morning drop-off line. It doesn't really matter. This tool's, like I said, applicable everywhere. And what we want to do is make observations. Okay, what we want to do is make observations. All right, so let me use just a silly, fun example that I actually did use like 3 or 4 days ago. Ryan, he's my son. He's 2.5 years old. Y'all know the terrible twos, okay? You get the terrible twos going, and these kids, especially now that I have a boy and a girl, 2 boys and a girl, the boy, he's getting wild. This kid is starting to like the Tasmanian devil around the house. He actually does Sonic. He'll like do this thing, like, Dad, I'm Sonic, and he'll take off and he'll like do the 2-year-old waddle run. But then, he'll run into the other room and he'll grab a crayon and he'll start coloring on the walls. And I'm like, instead of going in there and judging my 2-year-old son, being like, Ryan, no, you're not being a good boy. Like that's a judgment, right? But not being a good boy is a judgment. An observation is, hey, Ryan, I see you coloring on the walls, right? Like I see you coloring on the walls. And that makes your dad, here's the second one, feel that a high level of frustration, son, with you when you're coloring on the walls. Do you think you should be coloring on the walls? No, Dad. No, I shouldn't be coloring on the walls. Okay. Son, what needs do you have that aren't being met? Now, for a 2-year-old, this might be a little bit different, right? He might say something like, I want to color. Well, it's okay, great, let's color. But my fourth thing, request, is, son, we can color, and I want to meet your needs, but I request that we do not color on the walls, okay? So that's just a very simple example of how you can use ONFR, observations, needs, feelings, and requests, to be able to have like a high conflict-oriented situation, okay? What does this do? This gives you a structure. This gives you a plan of attack. You're not going to learn NVC right now here with me in its entirety. This is just an introduction to you, to give you a tool to maybe say, hey, go to Amazon, go download the ebook, go buy the NVC book, and start studying. Start studying communication so that you can start leading your own life better, and in turn leading your family and your community's lives in a more productive fashion. Because if you can't lead your own life and have conflict orientation with people around you, okay, then you're definitely not going to be able to do that as you become responsible for more things, as you become the leader of more things. So it gives you a structure, a plan of attack to make sure that your relationships in your life are always maintained. I have a saying. I like to say, I want everyone around me at all times to know exactly where they stand with me. And I think it's very important, because if you don't, what happens, you stack that emotional weight up and it gets too heavy, right? And then it's so big you can't even manage it. We talked about this in the last podcast a little bit too, and touched on that. It's like you can't manage the monster, but you can manage the baby monsters, right? So rush to conflict and go attack things quickly, and you can use this structure. The worst thing you could possibly do is sweep things under the rug to the point where the rug has so many conflicts underneath it that people are tripping over it as they're walking over the rug, right? And that's not going to ever do good for them. It's not going to do good for them. It's not going to do good for you. And remember, one thing that is, I believe, to be important is that you are the center of the positive interactions with other people, meaning that you take responsibility for how you have interactions with other people. It's never other people's fault. Okay, if you say it was their fault, they came at me, they attacked me, what you're really saying is you're not a leader. That's really what you're saying, because leaders step up and they say, hey, what need do you have that is not being met in the moment? Frustration, sadness, anger. No. What need do you have? Well, I have a need of security, right? I have the need of security. Well, then I might ask them like, okay, how does it make you feel when you don't have security? Well, it makes me feel uncertain. And when I feel uncertain, I feel unstable. And I'm a person that really needs to have stability. Okay, well, what would you request of me to do so that I can provide you more certainty to create stability so that you're not feeling so uncertain? And that so that we don't have to cross this bridge again. What do you request of me? Right? So this can go one of two ways, right? You can either, it can be me trying to figure out what I need to be doing, or it could be me addressing something with somebody else that I believe they need to be doing, but you do so in this non-violent way, okay? This non-violent way where you're not making harsh judgments at people and attacking them, because that's the only time they feel attacked, is when they feel like you don't understand where they're coming from, right? It's like, seek to understand before you try to be understood. So important for me in my life as a leader, somebody that takes pride in that, to have my communication radar on at all times. So, all right, let's use one more example, I think, and then we can move on to the second tool. But one more example might be, let's start at observation. I saw somebody, we were in the gym, and we were on a site visit, and I saw somebody act rudely to a member, okay? All right, let's go there. Okay, so we said, this person said, here's the observation I made. Well, if you don't want to be here, they said, why such a down attitude today? If you don't want to be here, then just go home. And I was like, it's a little harsh. Like, you never know what's going on inside the four walls of that person's head, and you're judging the fact that they have a bad attitude because they could very well have the perspective and definition of their attitude in that day as a good attitude. Who are you to judge if their attitude's good or it's bad, right? You can't judge somebody else's attitude whether it's good or bad. You can only make an observation, okay? I made an observation. I said, hey, I saw that interaction that you had with that member when you said, hey, why such a poor attitude? If you don't want to be here, then just go, in that tone. Do you recall that interaction? Boom, right there. Yeah, I remember that, right? If somebody actually is self-aware, oftentimes they'll be like, oh man, that was silly of me. Like I just was in the moment, and that's, she's actually like, we have a really good relationship, and it was just one of those things that slipped out. I know I shouldn't have said that, and they'll self-correct, okay? But if they don't, okay, then you continue down that path. Observations, feelings, needs, requests. Hey, listen, this is what I observed. Is this true? Did I observe this? Okay, yeah, it's true. I saw that. I'm not judging you. I'm observing you. Exactly what I saw. I didn't call you a name. I didn't make some subjective definition of some word that I used. I just asked, is what I saw true? Then I tell them my feelings. When I saw that, I felt that wasn't I felt a mixture of anger and a mixture of frustration, because I know how great of a communicator you have historically been based on all these other observations, based on the results that you have gotten at the gym, based on the admiration that the team has for you. And it made me feel angry, and it made me feel frustrated. And I have a need to make sure that our brand always is the forefront of positivity, is the forefront of communicating well and of treating each other well, and really of respect. That's what I have a need for. I have a need for all of us to respect one another and to speak to each other in a way that regards that respect. Okay? So my request would be for you to call that person, have a conversation with them, and make it right, whatever that means to you. Would that be a fair enough thing for me to ask you? And you may get, and then you may get a yes, or you may get some more pushback, okay? And we can go from there. But usually this de-escalates any negative emotion when you're not judging people, observing them, when you're telling them why your observation and how that, like what it was and how it made you feel when you tell them, that's like, hey, I observed this, and here's why I'm telling you I observed this, because it made me feel this way. All right? And so this is NVC, okay? Nonviolent communication. I'm actually about a year into this. And listen, I'm 35, just for those of you, to give you context. Started the business when I was 24. And the next tool that I'm going to share with you has been around a little bit longer. And I'm excited to share that with you. But this has taken my communication skills to the next level. I now can have a conflict-oriented conversation with anybody and make them feel great, appreciated, respected, seen, admired, and also make them enthusiastic about where that person, and myself, where we will be in the future together. And I understand that this takes time, and it takes 11 years, which is why I wanted to give you the context. It's taken me almost 11 years to figure out how to rush to conflict and how to make people feel really good about having a critical conversation, okay? Okay, so the next tool is feedback loop, okay? And we've had this instituted at Burn Boot Camp for a while now. All of our people use this, whether it's after a camp, before a camp, at the front of the house, in Child Watch, whether it's a positive thing or a negative thing, something we need to get better at, something we did really well, and oftentimes both of those things. And then there's really 5 different steps in the feedback loop, okay? The first one, you're going to ask somebody, how was that? I'll go through these and I'll break it all down. The first one, you're going to ask them, whatever that was, you're going to ask them, how was that? That's number 1, okay? Number 2 is, would you like my feedback? All right, that's number 2. Number 3 is from my perspective, ... That's number 3. Number 4 is that fair? Number 5 is, what will we do next time? Okay, these are the 5 steps of the feedback loop, and let me just go through these things pretty quickly here so that you can begin to use this, right? I talked about how to use this, how we use this in the gym, in a business context, which is a great application for it. This is a fantastic application for your family, for your kids. Follow this format. You will be the best communicator in your family, and when you're the best communicator in your family, then it is your responsibility for the livelihood and the happiness and the camaraderie with your family, because you've taken the position to be the one that says, I am going to take the responsibility to be the best communicator. And I'll tell you this, 100 times out of 100, the best leaders are always the best communicators. Okay, they're always the best communicators, okay? So you want to be a leader at the highest level, and you guys know I love my leadership talk, and it's what I am, it's what I believe in, it's how I've gotten to where I've gotten to, is by leading other people that are older than me, younger than me, smarter than me, not as smart as me, people that are as passionate, not as passionate, people I meet on the street, high five at the gas station, I believe in my heart, I'm not saying you have to believe this, I believe that I'm the leader to everybody that I interact with all the time. That means that I have to be the best communicator all the time. That means that I need to understand the human psychology underneath communication and how people react. And this is why we created this feedback loop. After years and years and years of screwing this up, I now bring you a pristine 5-step feedback loop that you can use with your family. The first thing, whatever that is, starts off with, how was that? Okay, how was that? You want to ask somebody how that event went. All right, well, I'm gonna use training for an example because it's on top of my mind. I was upstairs this morning at my 4:45 workout, and Katie Burke and I, she's one of our trainers here at Lake Norman. She's phenomenal. She seeks feedback. Right? She's not just sitting back passively waiting for it. That's another trait of a leader, seeking feedback. So she runs right up to me after camp, DK, let's go. Hey, I got a quick focus meeting. So, hey, let's get this show on the road because I need your feedback. Okay. I said, okay, Katie, how did that camp go? All right. So if you're at home and it's maybe an interaction you didn't like in front of your children, you can ask your spouse, hey, how did that interaction in front of our children go for you? Right. So whatever that is, just replace that with whatever the situation is. Okay. How was that? She said, DK, I had tons of energy. I was on fire. We had brand new people in here. I got to all of them. We're just closing down winter promo. I felt like, man, I was super sharp on that. The thing that I could have gotten better on was my one-on-one training today. I felt like I was moving around. We're personal training in a group, right? Group personal training. That means we are inside out. We are with an individual and then out to a group. And so she said, hey, I could have spent a little bit more time with the individuals today, and because I didn't, I felt like I left some of their confidence on the table. I felt like if I was just a little bit more individualistic, I would have brought the intensity up a little bit more. That intensity would prove to people how strong and badass they really are, and then that confidence that comes from being that badass exudes with them, spills over into other areas of their life, and all because I didn't focus on one-on-one like I should have today. My intensity led to all those other things, and now people are walking away from here not as good as they could have been, and that is my observation. I'm like, all right, Katie. In the back of my mind, I'm like, I have nothing to tell you that you didn't already say yourself, which is the beauty of this question. I don't have to be a critic if I give you an opportunity to be your own. And when you're your own critic and you're self-aware, all right, then you have an opportunity to come up with these things on your own, and makes this process a lot more enjoyable for both sides. I've also had it in the opposite way where people are like, I don't know, that's cool. What do you think? I'm like, no. Okay, how was that means, you can kind of do this. How was that means, hey, what was one specific thing that you did that was really good? And what was one specific thing that you need to work on that you thought was less than your best? Right? And I just give them clarity, all right? The next step is very, very important, okay? All right, imagine I'm knocking on your door at your house, okay? And you say hello, you open the door, you open it up a little bit, and I say, would you like my feedback, right? Okay, analogous to, can I come in your house? May I step in your house? May I come in? Because once you've let me into your house, once you've given me that permission to give you feedback, once you let me sit down on your couch, okay, now we are in a more comfortable setting. I'm in your environment now. You've given me permission to give you feedback. And when I do give you that feedback, it's going to land better because you're expecting it now. What happens if I don't ask somebody for their feedback and I'm like, you screwed up, you should have done this better, you were not all over the place, you should have been flying around, blah, blah, blah. And you're pointing and you're talking down at people. They do one of two things. They cower like this and they're like, oh, okay, yes, and be submissive. submissive, or they stand up and they maybe don't physically do it, but they mentally are punching you in your face repeatedly, right? Like that's the one of two reactions that happens when you attack someone like that. So by saying, knock, 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 hey, can I come in your house? May I step a foot in? Would you like my feedback? Okay, that is like them saying, if they say yes, you get to step that foot in that house. Okay, you're one step closer to a really good interaction. They could say no, which is also why you ask this question. Maybe Katie's dog is sick and she's got to go take her dog to the vet. Okay, even if I started in on her and doing the raw feedback, she's not there anyways. She's thinking about taking care of their family dog and making sure this dog is getting its medical care at the vet. So she can say no, and I'm okay with that. Then if she says no, I would say, then when can we pick this back up? And I'd continue to leave that decision in her court. The person getting the feedback needs to feel in control. That's what this whole thing does, okay? So now, I'm in your house, okay? I'm through step 2. I said, how was that? I said, would you like my feedback? The third thing is from my perspective. Now, if this here's Stanley Cup, which is amazing, and Morgan's been on this forever and been super hydrated and is a raving fan about it. I didn't get it at first, but I'm like, yeah, just Yeti. Like it's like a Yeti. I didn't get it at first. This little bottom part, like it fits perfectly into my cup holder. It's got a nice little handle. The straw's good. I mean, it's just a well-made cup. Good job, Stanley. Real proud of you guys. Okay, but this is my prop for my feedback, okay? So I'm now inside the house to continue our metaphor. You've let me in. Would you like my feedback? You said yes. I go from my perspective. This Stanley Cup is my perspective, okay? So I'm going to have my perspective. I'm going to hold it right in my hand, and then I'm going to say from my perspective, ... Or you could say from my observation, or from where I sit, or from my vantage point, or my point of view, or here's how I saw it, or if I were to give you my opinion of what I saw, here's what it is. Okay, that is what I'm talking about. Okay, from my perspective, ... means my perspective is no longer mine. Just my perspective. It's not right or wrong. I'm not going to force you to take my perspective. I'm going to set my perspective right down on your coffee table because we're now sitting on your couch, and I'm going to ask you later to pick it up. I'm going to put it down as objective. Okay, my objective piece of feedback from my perspective, and I'm going to ask you whether you want to pick it up or not. So then I'll give it, and I'll say, most times, because you asked question 1, they've already covered what you want to cover. From my perspective, ... I feel relieved because you already said what I wanted to say. That when you get down one-on-one with somebody, when you give them that intensity, that confidence breeds itself, doesn't it? Doesn't it just manifest inside of them? She's like, yeah, that's fair. Okay, she's like, yeah, for sure. Why is she nodding with me on that? Because she already said it. We're already in agreement, okay? It's so important to ask that question up front and get a good answer. Then I'm going to say the fourth question, okay? The fourth step is, hey, Katie, is that fair to you? Is that fair? Right? I want to make sure that her and our feedback is completely aligned. Is that fair? If she says yes, that, to continue our metaphor, is like her picking up the Stanley Cup and then taking that perspective and now owning it herself. So I've knocked on the door. I've asked permission to be let in. I politely and objectively, without judging you, giving you my perspective. I've asked you now if you'd like to take that perspective as your own. If you say yes, you pick it back up. Now my last step is to say this. What are we going to do specifically next time? So next time you train, what can I look out for? And she says, DK, what you can look out for is me being down individually on my knee, sit, stay, swivel, just like you've always taught me. Training this person with my proximity. I don't need to stare at them the whole time, but I need to get my head up and look out at my groups and make sure my groups are moving, but don't lose that individual intensity like I did today. And I'm like, that's amazing. Thank you. Awesome. We high five and we're done. It takes 5 minutes. The reason why you want to ask people specifically what they'll do next time, there's 2. One is that you want, as a leader, to paint a picture down the road of a place where you and this person are going to reconvene, all right, to continue a positive relationship with one another, a relationship of growth, of progression, and one that's an exciting future for both of you to actually end up at a point in the future being on the same page, okay? The second one, and the reason why I use the word specific, is because some people, more often than not, most people will say, I heard what you said and I'll do that next time. Got it. But it's like, do what next time? What are we going to do next time? You need a specific vision of the future that you and this person can convene at later. That's exciting, that's motivating. But you need to look out for evidence that when you get to that point in time, that it actually is progression. The way that you make sure that you manifest that progression is by being on the same page, being specific, and making them just repeat back to you what you guys just talked about, right? Now, boom, we high five. We have zero emotional baggage when we leave. And the interaction was really, really good, okay? So this is the feedback loop. It's so important to start with this. Start with the feedback loop. Really start to dial these things in. It's a much easier concept than nonviolent communication. NVC gets complicated, but that's the next level, okay? Feedback loop first, nonviolent communication second. Between these two things, man, don't you have a foundation to being a great communicator. Then you start to maybe layer on like some John C. Maxwell books. You keep listening to the podcast because I like to talk about leadership. You look about like Patrick Lencioni is a great leadership. Mel Robbins is great at leadership. You get all these, successful people that are great at leadership and communication, and you begin to just absorb, okay, all of the little nuances that make great leaders. But the macro, the big kind of pie in the sky thing is like, get that feedback loop down, make sure you're using it, rush to conflict, layer on with NVC, and continue your learning process. And so I hope that you enjoyed this interesting one today. Because when we think about the Burn Bootcamp podcast, it's like, okay, well, anybody knows Burn Bootcamp, it's like automatically you're synonymous with a fitness company, but it's like, what is fitness? It's a great question. What is it? In the traditional sense, it's like this started in the Civil War when we needed to go to battle and we needed to get in shape. That's where contemporary modern fitness really started, and performance training really started was then. And it's interesting just to see how that's evolved since that time, where it was just, hey, we need to get fit, meaning we need to get strong physically. It's not that anymore. It is much more than that. You don't need to worry about the mind-body connection. It is already happening. Your mental health is your physical health. Life is mental. Okay? The reason we show up and we put the work in the gym is despite what most people think, it's not to gain muscle primarily. It's not to burn fat primarily. And if it is, you're not going to last. It's too superficial. What it really is for you to gain mental strength, mental clarity, for you to allow that situation I was speaking about with Katie when she's down, sitting with you in an exercise, and you got push-ups, and yeah, it's just a push-up, right? Like, it's like the most basic exercise in the world, but like, that's not what we're there for. That's what we're doing, but it's not what we're doing that's important. It's who we're becoming. And who do you have to be the person that pushes through rep 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Oh, you think you're going to 20, 21, 22, 23. You have to be the person. Who do you have to become to be the person that could push through just a normal everyday goal and go maximize their potential voluntarily? That's what fitness to me is all about. I think that's what Burn Bootcamp's all about. And at the end of the day, it will also ultimately be our legacy, is we come together to do this thing, and by doing this thing, we call it physical fitness or training. What happens is that in our camps, every member that's in there, because myself and Katie and our amazing burn trainers, best of the best, top 1% in the world, I'll put them up against anybody out there, hands down. Because we are right there with you, pushing you to the next level, okay? Helping you understand that mind-body connection already exists, and trying to give you fluid two-way street between your mind and your body to be able to show yourself what you're really made of. So you come for the push-ups, but you stay for the community and the confidence, don't you? All right, guys, that's it for today. 2 tools on communication. I hope your leadership journey continues to be prosperous. And remember, no matter whether you are an executive at a multi-billion-dollar corporation or you are leading the lives of the people that sleep under your roof, at the end of the day, leadership is everything. Start with leading yourself before you can lead others. Make sure you're tuning in Monday through Monday. We got a podcast every day. Hang in there, guys. See you soon. 2 claps on 2. 1, 2.